The Galactic Union had made its decision. After years of tensions, misunderstandings, and arrogance, they finally declared war on humanity. The High Chancellor of the Union, a proud and overconfident Voltraxian, stood before a grand assembly of alien leaders and spoke with certainty. Humanity has refused to submit to our rule. They believe they are equal to us. This mistake will be corrected. As of today, we declare war on the Terran species. Their fleets will burn, their worlds will kneel, and their people will serve. The assembly erupted in cheers, confident in their victory. The Union had conquered dozens of species before. Some resisted, but in the end, all of them fell. They believed humanity would be no different. Their analysts reported that humans were technologically weaker. Their fleet was smaller. Their empire was young compared to the ancient powers of the Union. The war, according to their calculations, would be over in weeks. No one in the Galactic Union questioned the decision. No one doubted the outcome. They were certain. But humanity did not respond the way they expected. When the declaration of war was sent to Earth's central government, there was no immediate reply. No surrender. No threats. No negotiations. Only silence. At first, the Union took this as a sign of fear. The humans were in shock, unable to process their fate. The Union's fleets began moving into human space, taking positions for the first strikes. They sent messages demanding submission, but there was still no response. Days passed, then weeks. The silence continued. Then the first fleet entered the Proxima Centauri system, expecting to find an unprepared colony. Instead, they found an empty battlefield. The space station was abandoned. There were no civilian ships, no defenses, no resistance at all. It was as if humanity had simply vanished. Confused, the fleet's commander, Admiral Kor, ordered a scan of the system. There was something strange, a signal, faint but deliberate. It pulsed at steady intervals, almost like a heartbeat. The Admiral ordered his crew to decode it, expecting it to be a distress call or a last-minute plea for peace. Instead, when the translation was complete, the bridge fell into complete silence. The message was simple, written in perfect galactic standard. You wanted war. Welcome to it. Before Admiral Kor could react, the first ship in his fleet exploded. Then another, and another. The sensors detected movement, but nothing was visible. It was as if the enemy was striking from the shadows. Panic spread through the fleet as ship after ship was torn apart. Where are they coming from? One officer shouted. Kor tried to give orders, but it was too late. The last thing he saw before his ship was engulfed in flames was the silhouette of a massive human warship emerging from the darkness. The first battle of the war had begun, and the Galactic Union was already losing. The news of the Proxima Centauri massacre spread through the Galactic Union like wildfire. Dozens of warships, veteran crews, and a high-ranking admiral, all gone. There were no survivors, no escape pods, just a silent battlefield filled with wreckage and a haunting message left behind by humanity. Panic began to spread among the Union's officers, but the High Chancellor dismissed it as an unfortunate setback. They got lucky, he told the Council. A single ambush does not change the outcome of the war. To prove his point, he ordered a second, much larger fleet, 200 warships, commanded by Grand Admiral Vec, to invade human space and crush whatever resistance remained. This time, they would strike at Alpha Centauri, a major Terran colony. There would be no surprise attack, no tricks, only overwhelming firepower. As the fleet moved through the void, the Union soldiers were confident. After all, the last battle had been against a small scouting force. They had simply underestimated the humans. But this time, they were bringing the full force of the Union's navy. There was no way humanity could stand against it. Or so they thought. The fleet arrived at Alpha Centauri and found something they did not expect. There were no orbital defenses, no visible warships. The colony was fully intact, its lights shining, its cities untouched. It was as if humanity had not even bothered to defend the system. Admiral Vec laughed. "They've already surrendered," he declared. "They know resistance is useless." He gave the order for his forces to advance, to take control of the system and capture the humans alive if possible. But as the fleet moved into orbit, something changed. The planet's surface flickered. It was subtle at first, just a strange distortion in the light. Then the distortion spread, revealing something hidden beneath, a planetary shield stronger than anything the Union had ever seen. The fleet's sensors screamed warnings as energy spikes erupted all around them. Then, before anyone could react, the sky opened up with fire. Hidden beneath the shield, human weapon platforms activated, launching hundreds of missiles, plasma beams, and railgun rounds into the enemy fleet. The first wave of Union ships was obliterated before they could even raise their shields. Explosions erupted in every direction. The once confident soldiers of the Union suddenly realized they had walked straight into a trap. But the worst was yet to come. As the Union fleet scrambled to defend itself, their sensors detected movement, not from the planet, but from the darkness of space. Stealth ships, human warships unlike anything ever seen, began uncloaking all around them. They had been waiting, hidden in the void, perfectly positioned for an ambush. The humans had never abandoned Alpha Centauri. They had lured the enemy in, let them believe they were victorious, and now they were striking with full force. Panic overtook the Union fleet as they desperately tried to regroup, but there was no escape. The human fleet was faster, smarter, more ruthless than anything the Union had ever faced. Within minutes, the battlefield became a graveyard of burning ships. Admiral Vec watched in horror as his fleet was torn apart piece by piece. He tried to issue orders to form a retreat, but his commands were cut off by a voice, a human voice. It echoed through every ship's communication system, cold and unforgiving. "This is not a war. This is an execution." The last thing Vec saw was his command ship's hull splitting apart as a human warship rammed through it, tearing it in half. The second battle of the war was over. And once again, humanity had won. But this time, they made sure there were survivors, because they wanted the Galactic Union to understand something very clearly. They had declared war on humanity, but humanity would be the ones to end it. The survivors of the Alpha Centauri massacre returned to the Galactic Union, broken and terrified. They had left with 200 warships. Now fewer than 20 remained. The once proud Grand Admiral Vec was dead, his ship reduced to floating wreckage. The humans had let some escape, but not out of mercy. No, they wanted the Union to see, to know what was coming. Panic spread through the Union's ranks. The Senate chambers, once filled with confidence and arrogance, now trembled with uncertainty. For the first time, they feared humanity. High Chancellor Orvik, the one who had so eagerly declared war, refused to believe the reports. "They are just lucky," he spat. "We are the mightiest force in the galaxy. We will crush these savages with our full power." He ordered the complete mobilization of the Union's Grand Fleet, 500 warships, the largest armada ever assembled. It was an overwhelming force, a display of dominance. There was no way humanity could stand against it. Or so he believed. The fleet set out for Sol, the heart of human space. Every species in the Union watched in anticipation, convinced that the war would soon end. Victory was certain. How could humanity hope to stop such an armada? But as the fleet entered the Sol system, they saw something unexpected. Earth was silent. There were no warships waiting, no defenses, no orbital platforms. It was as if humanity had abandoned its homeworld. Confusion spread among the Union forces. Had humanity surrendered? Had they fled? The admirals debated among themselves, uncertain of their next move. But before they could decide, their sensors picked up something strange, a signal. It was broadcasting on all frequencies, a repeating message in flawless galactic standard. It was simple. "Welcome to Sol. We've been waiting." Then the stars around them flickered. At first, they thought it was a sensor malfunction. Then they realized the horrifying truth. Those were not stars. They were warships. The darkness of space came alive as thousands of human vessels uncloaked, each one armed and ready for battle. The Galactic Union had thought they were the hunters, but they were the prey. The human fleet did not hesitate. They attacked. The Union's 500 warships were caught in a nightmare. Their formation shattered instantly as human ships weaved through their ranks with impossible precision. Plasma beams, railgun fire, and nuclear warheads tore through Union vessels before they could even return fire. Panic spread. The admiral screamed orders, but it was useless. The humans fought like nothing they had ever seen. Ruthless, calculated, unstoppable. Every time the Union forces tried to regroup, the humans adapted. Every strategy was countered, every retreat was cut off. It was as if humanity had been waiting for this war. The battle lasted less than an hour. By the end, the once mighty armada was reduced to burning debris. Only a handful of ships managed to escape, fleeing back to Union space with a single message. The war is over. Humanity has already won. The remnants of the Galactic Union's Grand Fleet limped back to their territory, broken and humiliated. The survivors spoke in hushed voices, their minds haunted by what they had seen. The Union had declared war, believing humanity was just another species to conquer. But now, they understood the truth. This was never a war. It was an execution. The High Chancellor, Orvik, refused to accept defeat. His pride, his arrogance, would not allow it. He stood before the Senate, his voice trembling with both rage and fear. We cannot let this stand. Humanity must be punished for their defiance. But the Senate chambers were silent. No one spoke. No one moved. The footage of the Sol battle played on the central display. Thousands of human warships appearing out of the void, moving with terrifying coordination, cutting down the Union's forces as if they were nothing. The mightiest fleet in galactic history had been obliterated in less than an hour. What could they possibly do against an enemy like that? Whispers of surrender spread among the politicians, but Orvik would not allow it. We still have weapons, he insisted. Our dreadnoughts, our planetary defenses, our armies. We must strike first before they come for us. But even as he spoke, a new horror arrived. The alarms blared across the capital world. Human ships had been detected in Union space, not just a small force, an entire fleet. They had not waited for the Union to make another move. They had already begun the invasion. The war that Orvik had so eagerly started was now at humanity's mercy. The humans did not demand surrender. They did not negotiate. They attacked. Their warships descended upon key planets with terrifying precision, disabling defenses before the Union forces could react. Planets that had stood for centuries as symbols of the Union's strength now burned under human firepower. The Union military scrambled to respond, but the truth was undeniable. They had no chance. Every battle was the same. The Union forces tried to resist, but the humans always knew their strategies, always countered their moves. It was as if they had been studying them for years, waiting for this moment. Entire fleets were wiped out before they could even fire a shot. Union generals who had once boasted about their strength now begged for mercy. But mercy never came. Humanity was not just winning. They were erasing the Union's power from existence. The war had been decided the moment the first human warship fired its weapon. Now, it was only a matter of how long the Union could survive before the inevitable end. The Galactic Union was in complete disarray. Their fleets were shattered, their defenses crumbling, and their leadership paralyzed with fear. The humans were unlike any enemy they had ever faced. They did not demand territory. They did not ask for surrender. They did not communicate at all. They simply advanced, one system at a time, crushing all resistance with brutal efficiency. The war that the Union had declared was now out of their control. It was not a war anymore. It was an extermination. The High Chancellor, Orvik, sat in his private chambers, his hands shaking as he watched the reports flood in. One by one, key Union worlds were falling. The humans did not waste time with occupation or negotiations. They destroyed. Military bases were reduced to ash. Shipyards, the heart of the Union's fleet production, were obliterated before a single new warship could be built. Strategic planets that once held billions of citizens were now silent, their surfaces scarred by orbital bombardments. The speed at which humanity was dismantling the Union's power was terrifying. The Senate was in chaos. Some pleaded for a peace offer. Others demanded retaliation. But with what? There was nothing left to fight with. Every counterattack had ended in disaster. Every strategy had failed. The warships they had left were too few, too outdated, and too demoralized to face humanity's forces. Even worse, rumors spread that human operatives were already among them, sabotaging communication networks, disrupting supply lines, turning the Union's own people against them. The very foundations of the Union were cracking, and the enemy was not slowing down. In desperation, the remaining admirals proposed one last plan, a final stand. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon the Union still possessed would be gathered at one location, the core systems, the very heart of the Union. If they could not defeat the humans, they would at least make them bleed for their victory. Orvik seized onto this idea like a drowning man grasping for air. He sent the order across the remaining Union space. Gather at Core Prime. This is our last stand. Every remaining warship, every surviving soldier was sent to the core. The greatest planetary defenses ever built were activated. Massive orbital cannons, shield networks, anti-ship missile arrays. The Union had spent centuries making their core worlds impenetrable. If there was any place where they could finally stop the human advance, it was here. The final fleet took formation. The remaining admirals, commanders, and soldiers steeled themselves for battle. The core systems were their last hope. Then the humans arrived. Their fleet came in waves, thousands of warships emerging from the darkness of space. But something was different this time. This was not just a military operation. This was not a tactical strike. The humans had brought everything. Their entire war fleet, a force so vast that it eclipsed the core's suns, blotting out the stars. The defenders watched in horror as more and more ships appeared, more than anyone had ever imagined humanity possessed. This was not a battle. This was an execution. The war had begun with arrogance, with the Union believing they could conquer humanity. Now, as they stared into the endless swarm of human warships, they finally understood their mistake. It was already over. The last stand of the Galactic Union began with a silence that stretched across the battlefield. The core systems, once the heart of the most powerful empire in the galaxy, now stood on the edge of annihilation. The Union's fleet was massive, the largest force they had ever assembled. Hundreds of warships formed tight formations around the capital world, Core Prime. Orbital defenses gleamed, their weapons primed and locked. The most advanced shield networks in galactic history encased the planets. The Union had prepared for this moment, believing that if they could not win in open space, they could outlast humanity here. But as they watched the endless human fleet descend upon them, a grim realization set in. There was no outlasting this. The first wave of human ships broke through the outer defenses with terrifying precision. Unlike the Union's fleet, which relied on sheer numbers and outdated strategies, the humans fought like they had already won. Their warships maneuvered in perfect sync, weaving through incoming fire, their weapons striking with pinpoint accuracy. Massive dreadnoughts, their hulls black as the void, unleashed devastating energy barrages that shattered Union formations before they could even react. Advanced fighters zipped between capital ships, striking at weak points with ruthless efficiency. The battle had started, but the outcome was already clear. Admiral Xeltrix, one of the last remaining Union commanders, barked orders desperately, forcing his fleet to reposition, but it was futile. Every counterattack was met with an even deadlier human response. Union ships exploded in bright fireballs, their wreckage tumbling through the void. The mighty defense platforms of Core Prime, fortresses that had never been breached in thousands of years, began to fall, one by one. Humanity had come not just to fight. They had come to end the Union. On the ground, panic spread among the ruling class. High Chancellor Orvik stood in the central command chamber, his face pale as he watched the battle unfold. His once mighty fleet was being picked apart, his admirals shouting over one another, scrambling for an escape that did not exist. The shield networks protecting Core Prime flickered under the relentless human bombardment. One by one, the generators collapsed. The impenetrable capital world was now exposed. The final layer of defense had fallen. Then the humans did something that sent a chill through every living being on Core Prime. They stopped firing. Their fleet, thousands of warships strong, ceased their bombardment. The explosions ceased, the skies fell silent, and for the first time since the battle began, there was no destruction. Only the cold, terrifying stillness of space. It was worse than the bombardment itself. The Union's remaining forces hesitated, confused. The Senate chambers were filled with frantic voices, desperate for answers. Why have they stopped? Are they waiting for our surrender? Orvik asked, his voice barely above a whisper. No one answered. No one knew. Then a single message came through. Not words, not a demand. A simple transmission. A live feed of Earth. The humans had not just been fighting this war. They had been watching, studying every move the Union made. And now, they had chosen to show their enemy what true power looked like. The Union had seen many worlds in their time, but what they saw on that feed made them understand the truth. Humanity had never truly been fighting at full strength. Their fleets, they had more. Their weapons, stronger than anything they had used so far. The war the Union had started was nothing more than an inconvenience to humanity. The feed ended. The silence returned. And then, without warning, the final attack began. Human ships descended upon Core Prime, unleashing devastation like nothing seen before. They were not taking prisoners. They were not offering surrender. The war had been a lesson, and this was the final chapter. The skies turned red as the last remnants of the Union's defenses burned. The once mighty Core Prime, the jewel of the galaxy, was reduced to nothing but fire and rubble. The Union, which had ruled for centuries, was no more. And in the darkness of space, as the last lights of the Union faded, humanity's fleet turned and disappeared into the void, victorious, unstoppable, and feared like never before. The ruins of Core Prime smoldered beneath the cold expanse of space, its once proud cities reduced to lifeless husks. The Galactic Union, the mighty empire that had ruled the stars for centuries, was no more. The last of its fleets had been torn apart, its leaders scattered or dead. What remained of their once glorious civilization was nothing but wreckage, floating aimlessly through the void. And humanity had done this. As the last fires of war flickered out, the human fleet remained motionless in orbit. Their warships, dark and silent, loomed over the shattered planet like executioners watching the aftermath of their judgment. They had made their point. The galaxy had underestimated them, challenged them, waged war against them. And now, the lesson was complete. There would be no mercy, no rebuilding, no second chances. Humanity had ensured that the Galactic Union would never rise again. Aboard the command ship, Admiral Kane stood on the bridge, his expression unreadable as he gazed at the devastated world below. He had seen war before, but never like this. The enemy had not just been defeated. They had been erased. It had been necessary. The Union had declared war on humanity, believing them to be weak, believing that their species could be conquered like all the others before them. They had been wrong. The silence on the bridge was thick, heavy with the weight of victory. The officers around him exchanged glances, knowing that history had just been rewritten. The galaxy would remember this day for eternity. Humanity was no longer just another race among the stars. They were something more now, something feared. A transmission request appeared on Kane's console. It was from one of the few remaining neutral factions, watching from the sidelines. They had refused to take part in the war, but now, after seeing what humanity had done, they wanted to talk. Kane exhaled slowly and opened the channel. A figure appeared, a leader from one of the surviving galactic powers. Their face was tense, their voice careful, measured. "We acknowledge humanity's victory," they said, "and we wish to ensure peace." There was a long pause. Kane let the silence stretch before he finally responded, his voice calm, unwavering. "Then you be wise to remember what happened here today." The transmission ended. No more words were needed. Humanity had spoken, not with diplomacy, but with fire and steel. The war was over, and now, the galaxy understood the truth. Humanity had not just won. They had become something unstoppable.